Maintenance is the brain.
It is the
We
brain.
talk about
Okay.
it all the time.
Yeah.
You know, it's sort of the leasing agent in the very beginning makes or break whether you get a deal. I mean, certainly with the AI, it's really helping us. And then the agent comes in if you do it right and really kind of gets it over the finish line and creates that sort of like, we're going to take care of you. And if you feel that from that agent, you're going to lease because you're 86% sold by the time you walk in the door.
Probably the number one controllable reason why someone moves out is maintenance. It's
right.
definitely one of the top, but
right.
in many of the surveys ranks as number one.
82% of people that do a self-guided tour lease. Doesn't mean they're going to lease at your community. And here we are going, oh, well, it's not working. No, it's the way we're doing it that's not working, and the companies that are doing it well are capturing that. Yeah, I still see that today, which is very disappointing, where you'll see leaders in place, and if it's their idea, or even if they take someone's idea and make it their idea, then that can go forth, where they're not really looking at
we met many moons ago, and when we were building our startup in package locker and package room space, and you were at Bizzuto back in the day. I've always looked up to Bizzuto because I remember it was on the the East Coast. I was like, oh, when are you all coming to the East Coast? But you build these amazing properties, and you were in charge of a lot of the branding, face, vision, and you've worked with so many different brands now and people. So I'd love to hear, can you share how was there someone in the industry who made a major influence on you, whether it was at one of your previous companies, whether it's Bizzuto or working at GID or in the marketing space, that gave you your shot, or tell me a little bit more about some of the work you've done in that experience world.
Yeah, I think at Bizzuto is a good example, especially Tom Bizzuto. I would consider him my mentor.
Okay.
And many of the things that I feel like I've been able to accomplish is due to the learnings from him. And so he took a chance on me, and I was lucky enough to work directly for him. But then I also was surrounded by incredible leaders like Stephanie Williams or Julie Smith, and then Toby Bizzuto. And so during that time, I was just so excited to be part of a company that had such strong purpose. And if you listen to Tom Bizzuto's story, where he started in public housing and didn't think he could make enough of a difference, and he wanted to create sanctuary and couldn't do it, and then was able to do it by creating his own company. And today, it's still their mission statement, which is we create sanctuary. What I'm happy about is I had a hand in that, in the sense that they had a very typical statement, we want to be the best multifamily company in the industry, where it was what's the real purpose here, and listening to Tom and how he wanted to make a difference in people's lives and creating that sanctuary. That's what they did and continue to do, and that's where I learned the most.
I love how you just said about the sanctuary. I'll never forget that comment, and I remember being with you at these different events. But what's interesting is, I think a lot of people think you just build housing and people just move in. And there's so much more, it's very competitive out there. How do you think about that, and how do you determine, because a lot of these things you can't always put a dollar amount on. So what are kind of like your, when you put your hat on, what are some of the things that you're thinking about strategy-wise?
Yeah, and I think let's go even up further, which is back to that purpose. I think one of the frustrations that I see, and I was just talking to Kate Good about this, which is I still see that people don't necessarily talk about their purpose, their mission, their vision, because they think it's sort of, why do we need to do this? But they don't understand how important that is and how valuable that is. That's where they're really going to provide the right experience for the customer, the right experience for the associate who feels that purpose, and then they're going to perform better. And that's ultimately it's about, right? We're in business, and so I always find that still surprising to me. But for other things that I continue to see is we're still not focused on the customer like we say we are.
Sure.
We all talk about it, that it should be customer centric, or, it's all about the customer experience. But I think we're a little slow still to understand that should be the center along with your vision and purpose.
Something that stands out to me is we were just down in Southern California, and you and Rocky Garza had a session, and it was so cool to see how it was one of the best sessions I think I've seen. And shout out to Steve Lefkowitz and the crew over there who do a good job. But that was so much fun because you're right, you dove into realities and you broke a lot of the things people say down. I think you even tapped into like AI. And so I'd love to hear, because like you said, we say a lot of things, but are we actually doing it? And what are the actual understandings of our customers within the buildings, right? This is where they're spending their time. So how do you think about, AI and the way that residents are thinking about AI? Are there some takeaways there from that discussion?
Yeah, and one is, Chris, thanks. It's always nice to see you at these conferences, and I just feel like you're so additive in every discussion, too, and even these side discussions as we're walking outside the room or talking to you in the hallways. But Rocky Garza is just an incredible author and speaker, and he was the keynote, and I was lucky enough to take those keynote lessons that he talked about, and we did a separate session of how to actually apply them and take it down a level. So where he's 100,000 foot, I was 30,000 foot, but making it happen. But onto the AI, I'm so excited about it because I think it is a real pivotal moment in our industry where we actually can provide a better customer experience than we ever have if we really embrace the advantage of having AI that can personalize, can be consistent, can make it easier for us to really think about what's best for the customer. We're still missing, and I see this a lot in the research I do, is really that handoff. I love that our business is not ready like other big brands who actually will just use AI to answer customer service kind of requests, or if you're trying anything to get an answer, you just have AI. We're in an industry where we're still doing a lot of let's make sure we have that human touch, and I really think we should because we provide homes. And if there's an industry that should do this, it should be us. But what we're failing at is really making that smooth kind of, here's an AI kind of great tool, agent, but how are we using the human touch and making sure it's a real smooth transition. And so I think we're getting there, but we have a long way to go.
Jamie, super excited to have you here. It's actually our first conversation, you and I, right? So I'm super excited about that. A lot to unpack to what you just said. I want to start with AI. I want to get your take on the situation. There was a survey that was put out probably about a year ago that stated that leasing agents spend about 67% of their time trying to help residents and prospects navigate through the technology that's supposed to help them, supposed to make things easier. So if that's the case out there, also another aspect of it is that we expect, and this actually touches on people and culture and everything that you just said earlier, we're expecting an entry-level employee to be proficient in like 60 plus pieces of software. Super unrealistic. It's just not realistic, right? But that's a reality, not just for one, but for many companies out there. Like I heard this firsthand at conferences throughout the country. So with that being said, how do you think that in these particular situations, artificial intelligence could be a differentiator, could be a tool to clean up, I'll say this very tough to sort out situation for us as English.
Yeah, so you had two questions, so hopefully I'll answer both. And it's so nice to meet you, and thank you for having me. So I think that the first, which is you're talking about leasing agents that are spending a lot of their time that are really helping customers with tech. I think that we have not progressed as enough as we need, evidenced by that data point, so that it makes it easy for customers to do business with us. And the other is it should just be natural, right? It should just be happening. I mean, we don't like to download apps. We don't like to, it should just, service should be just, it's happening along the way. Things are happening as they need it. We should be predictive, right? Which is where AI is at. And how do we leverage that instead of using the same old models? And so if you think about that, if we could get rid of sort of the old way of doing business, embrace the new ways of doing business, I think it's going to alleviate some of the customer frustration and the associate frustration. when you talked about the second part of the question, which was, this poor new associate who's overwhelmed by the technology. And I remember at Windsor, we had this terrific salesperson who actually came from Saks. He sold suits. He was amazing, great person. He came in, top leasing agent, and then he quit. And he quit because of the technology. He was so frustrated that he couldn't deal with the customer the way he wanted to. And that's why he came to us, because he saw the purpose of providing a home. And he thought this is better than providing a suit, but then he left, right? So I think, like, if you look at Bell Partners, one of the things that I love that they're doing is they're rethinking their tech stack, and they're saying, how do we simplify? How do we make it easier? Do we need all of these things? And Bozzuto's doing the same. So I think companies are really taking a hard look at, why do we need all these technologies? And we're still not in that place of the all-in-one, where we were. We've seen our industry go back and forth, right? All-in-one, we do the Yardis, the Entrados, the Real Pages, and then it went to best in class with the Yardis, the Entrados, and the Real Pages. And now there's sort of this, well, maybe there's too many of these, and we've got to really simplify. And people are also waiting to see what happens with Yardi, Entrada, and Real Page.
I'm seeing AI possibly acting as a fabric that connects all the important dots.
Great way to say it.
But at the same time, flushes out the unnecessary stuff. I could see, and I'm pretty sure that there's someone out there building an AI piece of technology that's going to be your auditor. Is going to audit all the software for you, for every company, for any company, and it'll tell you exactly where you're spending more time that you should be spending, what's the technology that you pay for and you don't use, and what's actually really necessary. I could see literally an agent that being able to do that for you systematically based on data that's available on each one of those pieces of software.
It sounds like you should do it, and I'm sort of surprised it's not done already.
I think someone is probably
It's
working
gotta
on
be,
it right now.
right? It
For
makes
sure.
so much sense that we could analyze this so quickly and then determine a better path forward. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, there's a couple founders working on that. The agentic part of auditing each independent decision, making
So much
recommendations,
sense.
analyzing your documentation. But yeah,
So much sense.
Yeah.
Going back to customer service, I'm also big on the customers, especially on the internal customer. And I think the customer service journey starts with the internal customer. You can deliver exceptional customer service with unhappy employees. So if you start with your internal customer, which is your employee, your associate, and you pour into them and they're happy, they come to work because they get to work, not because they have to work. Everything else kind of works itself out.
I couldn't agree more. And this is, again, I'm going to go back to why I think we should instill the purpose. Because if you're coming to work just to get a paycheck, that's different than coming to work and, to your point, being happy, feeling that purpose, understanding you can make a difference in someone's life. Again, our industry, because we provide homes, and if we provide good customer care, it means their lives are just a little bit better. And that's a wonderful purpose, that we can make lives better. So again, as an associate, to your point, if you can instill that purpose, and then to your point, make sure they have a good experience so that they can deliver the right experience for the customer, yeah, I think it's a perfect scenario.
oftentimes in a building you might have 250 units, 400 to 600 residents in those buildings, and it can be very difficult for every unique situation of a family to a single person who's or a college student, right? You've got all these different types of people. How do you think about catering to all of those different types of people and all of those unique experiences? Do you read a lot of those reviews? Do you know, and how do you think about that? Do you use AI to read reviews? Because I gotta imagine with social media it can be really tough now as a CMO and a chief experience officer.
Yeah, well, I think that one of the things that I enjoyed at Bozzuto is we did our consumer mindset research.
Okay.
And so you kind of throw away demographics. What you're trying to figure out is the mindset of the customers who are drawn to your brand.
Yep.
And they can be families, they can be students, they can be any age and have different walks of life, but they still like similar things. So maybe it's fitness, it's wellness. I like to go out. I'm a foodie, and so I love that the kind of threw away the demographics,
Yeah.
and it's sort of looking at what's the best way to deliver this experience to this consumer mindset. And theirs was the engaged explorer. And so I think it was one of the best things that we did when it came to research, and that sort of makes it easy instead of you going, oh, it's a family and it's a student and
Yeah.
it's this, and sort of saying, no, here's our group, this is what they're interested in, and this is how we make sure we deliver the right services and the right customer experience.
I think a lot about, like you talked about earlier, the brand, the mission, the experience.
Yeah.
And when you're helping, especially for some of these brands that might be 40 years, 60 years, 80 years old, right? And rebuilding, that could be tough for a lot of, especially multi-billion-dollar corporations. How do you think about feedback and giving the feedback to a leader or a CEO or a board? And even maybe it's better shared, maybe how do you take feedback? How do you have you thought a lot about that in change management, right? And that balancing of change management?
I hope I answer your question.
Sure.
One of the things you said is, what if you have a company that's 40, 50, 60 years old, or Windsor was 60 plus years old.
Wow.
And so when I came to Windsor, there was no brand standards, there was no mission other than the typical, we want to be the best in the industry. They weren't ranked, and at the time, obviously, oral was something really important. And so it was like all of these things weren't done, but it was a great company.
Yeah.
And great people who cared.
Yeah.
And in fact, very quickly I felt I landed in the right place. But rethinking all of that and saying, okay, here's our purpose and this is why it's important, and then incorporating new ways of doing business, what happened is they became the #1 rated company in the industry for overall customer satisfaction. And they're #1 rated in the industry for maintenance. And it was all just taking what was there, this unbelievable foundation, but rethinking it from, again, the customer experience side, the associate side, instilling that purpose. And so, 60-year-old company that,
It's time gate entry systems were reimagined. Tired of dealing with clickers, key fobs, broken call boxes, and keypads everyone has the code to? Imagine managing multiple properties and realizing your keys are miles away. With Gatewise, access is in your pocket. No codes, no hassle. Residents can let in guests or deliveries from anywhere with a single tap. Gatewise integrates with your property management system, automatically revoking access when residents move out. The Gatewise management portal makes it easy to control every access point remotely from any device. No dedicated computer required, just smart, flexible control at your fingertips. Gatewise also supports self-storage, giving your team cloud-based control over tenant access. Fast, secure, and fully remote. More convenience for your residents, more time and cost savings for your team.
I mean, I think we talk a lot about maintenance, the trades. I've heard one of the top, in the scoring and surveys of why people move out is because someone wasn't fixed, or someone didn't respond to something. And I think, there's, sure, if you have a nice paint job, but the paint job doesn't determine whether you were able to live in the building or not. How much do you dive into like that maintenance as a brand strategy? Is that, if you think about service requests, maintenance, that's such a hot topic. Is that a part of a brand strategy, or how do you?
maintenance is the brand.
It is the
we
brand.
talk about
Okay.
it all the time.
Yeah.
It's sort of the leasing agent in the very beginning makes or break whether you get a deal. I mean, certainly with the AI, it's really helping us, and so we're much better at responding, getting back to customers with the questions they actually want answered, and doing everything in a very timely manner under less than 30 seconds, right?
Wow.
And then the agent comes in, if you do it right, and really kind of gets it over the finish line and creates that sort of like, we're going to take care of you. And if you feel that from that agent, you're going to lease, because you're 86% sold by the time you walk in the door. And so that's the first really very important brand experience, obviously, is that leasing process. But once they move in, who are they talking to? Who are they seeing? I mean, Jordan at Windsor Chastain here in Atlanta,
Yeah.
he was my guy. It was
Okay.
just wonderful to have him. If something went wrong, I would talk to Jordan, and Jordan would magically, fix it for me. And he, to me, was all about the brand. And he knew that as well. I mean, one of I think the best brand stories I had is when I actually did a focus group in a property that was not doing well. And it was in Texas, very high rents. And unfortunately, there were floods, there were all sorts of things that went wrong. Elevators were down. It was just tough, and people were paying top dollar. I went into the focus group, and I literally was shaking at the end of it because people were so irritated. And I care, and so it was hard for me to actually hear their suffering. But one of the things that they said to me over and over again is, Adam is wonderful. Adam is wonderful.
Wow.
And Adam cleaned up the hallways. Adam was cleaning the amenity spaces. It was all about Adam cleaning the garage. I came down after that focus group. I looked for Adam, found Adam in the garage.
Wow.
And I said, I just finished this focus group. I gave everybody gift cards. I have one left. I'm giving it to you.
Yeah.
And I said, because I want to thank you, because you make a difference in these people's lives. And he looked at me, got tears in his eyes, and said, I worked at McDonald's, and I understood the importance of the brand, and I understand that what I do makes a difference. I mean, it's just, that's the type of people you want in your properties.
You're speaking Adrian's love language right now in the maintenance world. I mean, I totally agree with you, but this is his expertise.
So much goes through my mind now. So it's going to be my turn on a maintenance conversation here. I think we're hearing, very influential leaders in the industry acknowledging the fact, because, the numbers are not lying. Probably the number one controllable reason why someone moves out besides, rent increase or, they move with their job is maintenance.
That's
It's
right.
definitely one of the top three.
That's
But
right.
in many of the surveys ranks as number one. So if that's your number one variable, and we have now at the site level probably turnover rates in the 90%. It's a real number that I got from very trusted sources at very large companies. They're operating throughout the country, hundreds of thousands of units. And I don't think that those are very isolated situations. I think that the industry, and it's kind of hard, it's tough for a company to say our turnover on maintenance is 90%. Nobody's gonna admit that. I just know from sources because I just network with a lot of high level folks in facilities, and we have honest conversations. So we know that this is what makes or breaks a property. At the same time, we're not doing what it takes to attract, to retain this personnel. On the other hand, it's being said often on the set here that the people in trades are the millionaires of the future.
Mm-hmm.
Some
That's
will
right.
argue of the present.
That's right.
Because they're doing jobs that are not going to
That
be
they
replaced
replace.
anytime soon by
That's
AI.
right. That's right.
So I like your thoughts on it. First of all, I know it's like a long, I went many directions. You could tell that I'm passionate about this, right? But what do we do? What do we do better as an industry to attract, but not only to attract, but close that back door? Because right now it's like spinning out of control with people coming into the door, and we push them right to the back revolving door.
Yeah,
That'd be the first thing.
I couldn't agree with you more that maintenance is the brand. And again, I love that Windsor saw that, made a difference, and celebrated maintenance. I can't tell you how many times maintenance was given recognition and celebrated at their national conference. I remember the one year I was there, it was the year of maintenance. It was, that's who this is focused on, this is who this conference is for, it's all about you. And that, I never had seen that before, right? It's almost like they get overlooked. And so you can't do that. I love that you said their skills are not going to be replaced by AI. And I couldn't agree more. And maybe, yes, like you said, in the future, but for now, they're becoming more and more important. But we are lousy at explaining how this can be a great career. And we're not good, again, at driving home that purpose. When I have done focus groups with service team members, and they'll tell me a story like, well, I go, why do you like doing this? Well, I fixed a single mom's, she had Thanksgiving with some friends and her dishwasher wasn't working, and I came and fixed it on Thanksgiving so that when she was done and she didn't have to clean up as much. Or another person shared with me a young mom was upset and he couldn't understand why. She was one of those customers that was always very friendly, and she was struggling because she just had a newborn, didn't have anybody to help her, and couldn't get her crib together. He went up, not only put the crib together, put a nursery together, right? Making a difference. So how do we allow them to have the time to do that, to make the difference so they can feel the purpose? How do we recognize them more? How do we provide better tools so their job's easier, better training? The other, and you know this, there's so many predictive tools, AI, that we should be using, heating and air conditioning, right? You have a sensor on it. If it's gonna go out, it's like, replace it instead of waiting for it to, blow up and then it's like 105 degrees and we got to fix it, right? Be really good about what we do on that preventative maintenance and make it easier for them. The other is I'm excited about centralized maintenance. I get that this doesn't work for all portfolios or all places, but I like the idea if you have several properties in a region and combining forces and people are dispatched as needed. And then that way you're going to be able to service what's needed first and pull your resources. So I still don't think that we're rethinking our business models well enough on maintenance, but yeah, we've got a ways to go. But hopefully we'll get better at this, and I think we are.
You started with your experience at Bozzuto, and the fact that companies are not really focusing on what it should be the thing. To give people purpose.
Yeah.
And I think at the times it's not really intentional. I think it's, people at the top could be actually, they know in their heart what it is, whether it might not be properly expressed, or if it is, it just ends up being on a wall in a CEO's office. But when it comes to people at the site level, if you go and you do like a survey and you ask them, what are the things we believe in here at ABC company, it's going to be very tough for you to get some answers, like some right answers there. So I've seen this as an employee for many years, right? And sometimes there were, large, very large names in a game to where there's a significant disconnect between what corporate projects as being, what we believe in, our values and everything, and what's being projected at the site level. They're two different stories. How do we bridge that gap?
I think you're right. And I think sometimes it isn't, to your point, that people don't care or have a strong kind of purpose, but they're not communicating it in a way that everybody understands it or remembers it. One of the lessons I've learned is when doing this, make it simple, right? So when working with Tom and Julie Smith, and we had a vision statement, it was like nobody's going to remember that. And so to your point, if you walked on site and you said, what's our mission statement, nobody's going to say it. But when you go back to, again, in that case, where we said, listening to Tom and his story, and it was like, well, that's it. We create sanctuary. Mm-hmm. It's so easy. If you go to a Bozzuto property, they're going to know. They're going to know what the mission statement is. At the majority of the time. Tom Bozzuto still goes out to the properties and still asks that question, by the way, and still considers himself the chief cultural officer. And so even though it's not his company, it's Toby's, he's still out there making sure people understand that purpose. But he understands why that value makes a difference. And I think to your point, you walk in and you see it on the wall, and you're sort of saying, how does that relate to me? So you have to be very clear. There's an old book, Traction. I don't know if you've read it. The
EOS playbook.
There you
Yeah.
go.
It's great.
And
EOS is one of the best systems out
right?
there.
And
Yep.
they talk about it as well. They talk about being very clear.
Yep.
Very clear.
Concise, clear.
And what is
Yep.
that mission? Making sure everyone knows it, reinforcing it. The same with the values, always reinforcing it. Like, again, not to bring up Bizzuto again, but Tom Bizzuto had his values in every speech he's ever done. Every speech. He always included the values. Every time. There wasn't, and that could be outside the industry when he served at boards. Any place he was at, he always talked about the values. And so if you follow that book and the method, and you're clear with your purpose, your values, I think it can get to the team on site and make that difference.
Yeah, so many people mess up, I would say, from a marketing standpoint of jumbling a bunch of words into their mission statement, or like as you said on the wall. And Toby, you got it in 5 words. You know, and every time I think I've talked to him or Tom, they're so clear and short, and they actually are so excited to hear what you have to talk about. I remember, like, I'll never forget, like at an NMHC event, I thought I was just going to say hello to Toby for like 1 minute, 30 seconds. And he's like, oh, come over, join me. I think we spent 45 minutes together. And he was introducing me to other people. He was so interested in what I was interested in and talking about and thinking about and giving me advice with nothing to gain from me, you know, and that was so cool to interact. So I have so much respect for you and that team. I always say, you know, people in the industry, there's almost a diaspora of people moving on and graduating. But, you know, I think the other piece is, to your point, around branding. You know, it's interesting because their name is on every building, right? Or their name is in it. It's not like it's just X company. It is
That's right.
their name. Steve Halsey. So we put a request out for some folks to come and ask
love
questions.
him.
So Steve Halsey used to live in Atlanta. Now he's back on the prairie. So hey, Steve. But we've got a few questions and from the audience, and so we'd like to make this interactive. But you know, I think on the topic of marketing, and you know, Mark Zuckerberg said they're now trying to use AI to create everything. I think AI sometimes creates things incorrectly, not always with the same passion or emotion. But his question is how will marketing be affected by AI, and especially as we think about the real estate world? You know, what are you seeing already, and what do you foresee into the future? Give us a glimpse into what your vision is.
Well, Steve, first of all, he's just terrific. Talk about another mentor. I would add him to my list. And something you just said that I disagree with is Toby Bizzuto is absolutely wonderful, but you're always additive in every conversation. So anytime spending with you is worthwhile. And Toby and Tom are so different, right? And that's what I think is also just a wonderful to see this company continue on under the Bizzuto name, far different leadership, but again, the company that will live on for many generations. On AI and marketing, it's already changing, right? Everything is changing. You think about, and Kate and I talked about this when we spoke together at the International Builder Show, and even how, you know, with the AI generated content on Google that is pulling, right, from what we're putting out there. And so we have to think, okay, every time we're doing something, how do we make sure it's being pulled in? You know, again, the first part of AI under Google, and how are we making sure we're found? And it's interesting with the tools like ChatGPT where people are using it to shop, right? They're looking at brands, or they can say, hey, what are the reviews at this community, or what are the other alternatives to this community? So the shopping is very different because of AI, and for all of us, right? I mean, it just makes it a lot of fun. We can get answers very quickly. And so we have to think really hard about what we're doing and making sure that we're not doing just the ILSs and we're just doing a website, but how do we make sure that our content is infused and so that it's coming up where it should and these other places. And so it's completely changed our marketing.
It's funny because, to your point, like, I think for us, this is very disruptive. But I've realized one of the things, like for kids, you're like, oh, isn't this so cool? And my son's like, oh, this is just the way it is. And it's wild because they're growing up, and I think a lot of times we say, oh, these people don't have technology in our buildings. They don't understand some of these we're doing. And they're like, no, actually, this is their life. Like, they are into these things too. So I'm curious to hear too, are there some people out there, you know, that you're looking up to, maybe in the industry or maybe outside, who are some innovators when it comes to marketing, or some people that you deep dive on experience, or maybe even companies? You know, are there other companies outside the industry? Because you go to a lot of events as well. Are there other people that you're like, wow, someone who's a change maker that we could learn from in the multifamily space or hospitality space?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple brands that you won't know, but I can tell you why I like them. Karama, which is a tennis shoe, they give back. They're old, nostalgic, plus modern, by two people and two guys from Brazil, and they were skaters. And but there's something about that brand that's authentic and it's fun, and they give back, and it's just, I think they do a great job of their storytelling. And I seem to always gravitate to those sort of smaller brands that I think are authentic, empathetic, good with AI, but also stay true to their brand. Yeah. There's a French online clothing brand, Cezanne, the same thing. I mean, she is the woman behind it, is just a terrific brand storyteller. But she's also making sure she's listening to her customers, and she's building a community. So those are some of the lessons we've learned before, but watching new brands come up and do this is great. One of the things that I think all of us like is, Ryan Reynolds and his, we laugh about this, but what genius, right? Yeah. Reading an article in the New York Times, and it's fast-vertising is what it's called, is being there in the moment and being able to take advantage of what's being said and with humor. Oh my God, right? That is
making fun of himself all the time.
Absolutely, we go nuts for it, right? I think all of us go nuts for it. And then I think for me, for ideas, you turned me onto All In, which is fun.
The All In podcast, yeah.
I love that, and I still do some of Harvard Business Review and IdeaCast and other places. But I'm always looking, just always paying attention. I find it fun, and I love change. Yeah. I can't even imagine not having everything continually evolve and get better. Yeah. And so I've never been one of those that's like, oh, this is changing. I'm, sort of like, to your point of your son, this is where we are today, and I know it's going to get even better.
I'm a student of marketing. I never went to school. I'm super passionate about marketing. Based on what you just said, and by the way, I agree, right? The way AI is influencing the way we search. I heard, a major marketing influencer mentioning that they did studies, and then the intention to buy is 30 times higher on a person that searches for a product or a service through ChatGPT. So if you're on the other side and you're the company, the brand, or one of the brands that's being recommended, basically you have it in a bag. It's in a bag for you. So I want to put this into context of apartment communities, multifamily brands, and I also want to put it in a context of copy. Because to me, I'm looking at it, everything revolves around the quality of the content. By the quality means like stuff that you will stop the scroll and you will actually consume, you will read. And I think that's where the name of the game is. I want to see if what's your take on copy, how important copy is, and then how do you see that playing into the multifamily space in this context with AI and search and everything?
Well, I think you just said it, so I love it. And it's so funny you were saying you never took marketing. I didn't either, and it's fun that I landed where I did. I have a math theory degree. I never did any marketing classes, but certainly I think I found purpose and love this industry and found that I use my math every day, and certainly even more now than ever. But to your point on the content is so important. We're seeing some companies that are really looking at this and saying we need, the right content creators, and maybe even eliminating a graphic designer and outsourcing that, and then saying, hey, we need a content creator. This is what's more important than ever before. Again, I think you said it well, and I think we have to think about that, and I think we have to get better at it. What I don't want to have happen, or you want to have happen, is, or as a customer, is the things that we've done sometimes with SEO copy, right? Where it's just for SEO, it's just going to come up. The same can happen with stuff. But how do you make it, like you said, engaging, authentic, something we want to read? That's where it's going to become valuable, and you are going to come up more. And I think we just want to say, a lot of times that we have the right words we think are going to be the triggers, and I think we have to get way past that.
Education is huge. I'm a huge consumer of LinkedIn, as well as person that interacts or spends a lot of time on LinkedIn. I'm a content creator there. What I'm seeing out there is that we sit on gold mines. Every management company is sitting on a gold mine data. That's data, right? Whether you're a Yardi person, Entrada, is so much data into Entrada that you could educate the public. You could actually use it to your advantage. Like you could drill into that data and you could actually tell stories and educate the public too. And honestly, besides Jay Parsons, I'm not seeing that being played out. And there's no coincidence why Jay Parsons has tens of millions of impressions a year. It's because of that, because people are thirsty, they're hungry, they wanted to learn. And if we're not using that gold mine, or we're not coming up with new theories, and we're just basically recycling what's existing, we're making proclamations, right? We make statements without backing up of numbers. I think that actually makes the content less relevant, less interesting. So I would love to see the industry like digging more into data and educating us all, really, like me included, because I love to see. I'll give you an example. I was looking at maintenance turnover rates, and then when I did a deep search on the internet, all I could find was a survey done by NAA several years ago, and the numbers were like high 30s, and that's like very far from today's truth, right? Maybe that was relevant at the time, but things have, they have happened, they have changed so much. Every company has that type of data. How valuable will be for us to say we're at 90%, like what I'm hearing right off the record, we're at 90%, and what can we do to like bring that down to like 60? Or Peter Drucker said, if you can measure it, you can improve it, right? So if we're not measuring, we just say it's a problem, but we don't define the problem, say it's 80, it's 90%. Our goal is to like bring it down to 30%, right? Just say something, how can we move forward? And that doesn't go just for that. That was just a particular example, but I like your take on, on data and how valuable or maybe not so valuable you see that.
Well, I think you again said it so well. And I'm also a fan of Jay Parsons, because he's the one we read, right? He's the one, like if I want to understand what's happening in the market, I'm going to read him. I did it today. I read some of his posts today. So a great example. What I'm seeing is Elise AI actually hired someone who is actually now getting really deep with the data in our industry and providing some of those answers. And they're really focused on it. And I think from that data, we're learning, right? And so they've decided to say, this is important. We're going to make this happen. Zillow's done a great job over the years with really looking at what the customer wants in our business and how we need to change. A simple data point that a lot of people got rid of the self-guided tours because the conversion rate wasn't as high as the in-person tour. Well, the problem was we weren't doing it right. Zillow has a piece of data that they just talked about, which is 82% of people that do a self-guided tour lease. Doesn't mean they're going to lease at your community, but they're going to lease. And here we are going, oh, well, it's not working. No, it's the way we're doing it that's not working. And the companies that are doing it well are capturing that, which goes back to your point. If you know that piece of data, then you can kind of say, well, wait a minute. Why am I getting rid of self-guided tours? I need to be paying attention to what the customer wants. And so I couldn't agree more. I think the other thing that I'm worried about with data is that we have it so fragmented. We talk about this in the business, right? Even in your own company, you'll have like customer data that'll be like and say it's a lease AI or a funnel, and then you'll have it in Yardi or RealPage, and then you have the reviews, and that might be in Soci or Bird Eye or Reputation. And it's like, where's the one mega customer database that we should be looking at for those insights? Bozzuto is a company that's definitely trying to create that customer database. Ven's helping with that as well. And I love that because I think, again, even the company knowing their data well, which we don't do. I mean, you're talking about the industry, but we have problems within our own organizations. And so I think we've got to get better at that. But to your point, if we're able to get better with that and also use some of these national players and then kind of look at this and say, okay, here's what we need to be doing to service our customer better. I couldn't agree more. We're still not great with this.
One source of truth is what I call what you just described. When you say, pulling all that data and like aggregating, just
It's
having one source
one
of
source
truth.
of truth. We talk about it, but yeah, we haven't done a good job with it.
On this point of fewer, having all of the information at your fingertips, I think the funnels are broken a lot of times. And Lisa Trozian talks about this a lot, where you type in your information and it says, I'll get back to you soon, or how many rooms do you want, or what, and it's like, I already told you all that information. Now you're making me start over again in this bot. It's so interesting because these founders who are in college or dropping out are building these AI tools that are pulling all these pieces together, whether it's for sales, marketing, et cetera, but also the dashboards. They're integrating faster the information together. So I think it's spot on what you're hearing and seeing from a lot of these companies. There's so many walls that have been put up, but breaking down those walls in the industry is kind of important. How do you think about, if we talk about breaking down walls, figuratively or in reality, for your career? So that was another question we had was, about breaking down barriers, breaking down walls, and in this industry that's been around. It's one of the oldest industries in our world, right?
I think for me, I just cared.
Okay.
And I've said this to you, and I really care. I care about our customers because I think starting as a grounds person and understanding right away that even though I was picking up the trash, when people would come up to me and say, can you help me find my cat? Or I can't get to the grocery store, I'm sick.
Yeah.
And I would go get their groceries. I'm sure that's not what my company wanted me to do, but I could see I could make a difference. And then by doing that, it kept me in this sort of like, I want to do this, and then I wanted to do it well. And so I just worked really, really hard. And I always was curious. I always wanted to sort of stretch the barriers, to your point, and really think about what are better ways to do business. And so I think I was an innovator, and I think that helped me. I think where I failed is that I didn't craft my career. I kind of waited for people to tap me to do that next move. I think that was a mistake. I think that I love that when I talk to people today, I tell them that. And I said, what do you want to do? How do you want to get there? How do I help you get there? But really thinking through that versus me, somebody would say, that's great. Why don't you come over here? Or, oh, wonderful, you did a great job. I think that was the biggest mistake I made. So I don't think I really broke down the barriers other than I worked really hard and I cared and that I had results. I think I should have been smarter about thinking through that so that I could have done even better and have, I think, even higher positions.
That's huge of you to share that. And as we think about breaking down barriers, I think for me, I want to ask you about maybe one of the other lessons that you've learned over the years that if you could go back and tell yourself 10, 15 years ago. For me, a big one is that any idea can come from anywhere. And I always believed, you had to, I was taught to respect your elders, right? Respect those who've respect the experts. But then oftentimes I found in some large organizations that they didn't want to listen to the idea if it came from the wrong person. So that was a big learning for me at least 10 to 15 years ago. Are there any big other lessons that you would share with our audience or other people that you've learned, and take us through maybe from, again, the marketing world, but also for leadership?
Yeah, I still see that today, which is very disappointing, where you'll see leaders in place, and if it's their idea, or even if they take someone's idea and make it their idea, then that can go forth. Where they're not really looking at the power of the associates who really know the customer and really know what to do and gathering those ideas. Starbucks was one of those, right? Where they would make new drinks based on what customers were asking for. And the baristas would come up with what's the new kind of menu for us. And where we don't do that, we're still very top down. So we've got to do a much better job of really being more free with sort of where do the ideas come from, what's best, and how do we make that happen. another lesson I continually see, or something I continually encounter, is people don't see their own value. And one of the things I'm most proud of is having a small hand in someone's career. And I can look at so many different people in so many different companies that I either hired, mentored, or had a small hand in their career, as I said, where I could recognize their skills before they could, or could help them, take something maybe they weren't doing as well as they needed to, and help them get better. I don't see, still to this day, people really reaching out the way they need to. I feel like we're very, here's what you're doing wrong versus here's what you're doing right, and how do we get you to that next level? And it frustrates me. I think we've got to get a lot better. And you talked earlier about that turnover rate. That's an example, right? If we're really working with the service teams and we're saying, we're here to help you, support you, get you to that next level, and we're really thinking about it, we're going to do better. But I think we struggle with that. I think as a young person, I was lucky. Even Steve Lefkowitz, he tells me that. He goes, you were lucky, and I think I was very lucky. If you work for somebody like Tom Bizzuto, that can make a whole difference in where you end up, right?
Yep.
And so I would say, as a younger person, like if I was younger me, I would probably make those shifts sooner. As I shared, I waited for someone to tap me versus really thinking about what's the best way to go here and become better.
I think luck is also putting yourself into the right places, putting lots of shots on goals,
yes,
taking risks. You
right,
probably gave something up multiple times in your career for something else that you were uncertain or unsure of. And that's something I think a lot about is putting yourself in situations that to other people don't seem like a good opportunity or too risky, and they really aren't.
Yeah, and I think the most angst I had in my career was a young mom. And really, to your point, talking about giving up, and I can get teary-eyed right now thinking about it, because I was working a lot. And I was a single mom with 2 kids, right? And so it was very hard, because I want to be a great mom, and I want to do well at work. The only thing that's made me feel better, and I still have trouble with it, is talking to my daughters. And having them both say, Mom, you're the best mom, right? And some of that weight we put on our shoulders isn't quite as bad as we make it. And certainly Dove did some research around this as well, and they'd interview the moms and the dads, and they would talk about not being home enough or not feeding their kids right or all of this. And then the kids would come in and say, you're the best dad, you're the best mom, right? And so I think that's something that I really felt, and still I get emotional about today.
I think that's the most important thing for all of us, is to be the best parent we can, first and foremost, because if you don't have it right at home with your family and your kids, that's the most important. But of course, you've made a huge impact on my life. Oftentimes I always say, especially when you're selling hardware or have a startup and there's other people already there, but then you get a shot in the door. That's what you all gave us probably 9 years ago. So I'll never forget that in my past lives. But it's been great to continue to stay in touch, and this has been so much fun. And I think you're paying forward the innovative vision on AI, the innovative vision of sharing your knowledge on marketing, experience, empowering and improving the wellness and the importance of housing in our industry and our nation. The amount of jobs we create, right? But I think to see you be involved with NMHC, NAA, but also RETSI, the organization, is so great on the technology side. Yeah.
If you were to name one thing in marketing, in multifamily marketing, that's overhyped, and another thing that's underplayed, like there's something great, a gem right there, there that nobody sees, like some amazing thing that happens, and most of us don't see.
I think overhyped. I'm going to have the same answer, but for both. Overhyped is AI, but without human intervention. It's sort of, when people are just using AI and they're not really, again, looking at the best way to use it or having that human intervention, I think that's a problem and can be overhyped. Underhyped, the same thing, AI. There are so many things we can do with AI that we're not doing yet. I'm so excited about how we're creating a better leasing experience. Some of the examples you gave from what Lisa said, some of that's improved. And it's changed. It's not the same anymore. You're going to get your answers right away. You're going to get what you asked about, because that was the typical. Somebody asked about a 2-bedroom apartment. We told them about a 1-bedroom. They asked about pets. We didn't answer, right? All of that is changing, and it's much better. Where we're still failing is that live agent intervention, where we say, would you like to be turned over to a live agent? We don't do it. So underhyped AI, overhyped AI, but I feel so good because I really think we are at that tipping point, and we're going to create the right experience for our industry. And again, if an industry should, it's an industry like ours that provides home.
It's awesome.
I couldn't think of a better way to wrap up the conversation. Very grateful to have you here, flying in, just being here with us.
24 hours.
This is
I think
so good.
This is great. This has been amazing, and we can't wait to have you on next again soon. And I know we're doing a Power Couples one with you and Kate soon, so that will come out probably after this. But there's going to be a Power Couple one, so definitely can't wait for you to come back to Atlanta again. We'll do this again soon. But always great to have you on. Thanks for all the hard work you're doing and the mentorship and leadership. And like you said, the small impact, the small moments you spend with people make a big impact on the others in your life. And you never know that impact you're going to make on someone else's life. And they'll never forget for you. They say, they'll forget what you say, but they'll never forget how you made them feel and that you care.
That's right. Ditto.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.